in general, Max was just always very real. Like he's somebody that in such a high level, position, was, such an accomplished position that he's in. He's had so much success. It'd be very easy for him to not be like that. And it's not just with me. He seems to be like that, with everybody. And I think Max is somebody that just wants to race cars and loves to talk about cars, loves to talk about racing. And so when I came in, he was just always even when I was a reserve, actually, like I always noticed that he would always make an effort to like just acknowledge me and say hi and stuff like this. And when I first was a reserve, this is ages ago, so it was like 2021 or 2022, was like the first couple of times I'd go to a race as a reserve. And even then, he knew I was racing F2. And so he'd come and ask me about it. How's F2 going? How's the car? What do you, how's everything feeling? And I just like, the fact that he was asking me about my stuff, I remember at the time was just really cool. And he's always been very real like that. So, and then when I went to Red Bull, through all of it, he was very supportive. I won't go too much into detail about it, but he was very supportive, very, very supportive of.
Because I remember seeing a couple comments he made and a couple of social media posts he liked. And I know it's very difficult for him because he's still in the team and things, but I sort of felt like he went about as far as he could to tell the world that what happened wasn't right. Does that ring a bell? Like,
yeah, 100%. He was. I spoke to him during. I spoke to a lot of people during that time, but I spoke to him, about how about it basically, and he was very supportive. Yeah.
And what did that mean to you?
I think I just really appreciated it. I think it was somebody that I think I was so excited to. Not to go against him, but to go, be in a team with him and, be able to have the opportunity to basically be in a car that's the same as him and just see everything that he does and have a driving lesson from, from the best in the sport basically. And that was something I was very excited for. And I never went in there, like these guys that go in there and talk about trying to, go in and beat him straight away, and it's just such a stupid thing to do. I think it's more, having somebody like him to learn off was very exciting for me. So,
can you give us a moment where you saw him do something and thought, he's good? Not even necessarily when you shared a team, but at some point you would have had.
I'll never forget this. This is one that was so. Very first time I went into Formula One was Zandvoort. And it was wet in FP3, and I'd never driven the car or the track, together. It was a very hard weekend, and obviously it was when Daniel had his injury. So I basically went out trying to learn the car, trying to drive on an intermediate tyre, which I'd never driven before. And we're getting through the session, and basically in a Formula One car, especially last year's cars, and like the previous generation, you have to be so confident to drive these cars. Like the commitment you have to have, which is also why the Red Bull thing was probably even more evident for me that it looked really, really tough, is because even if you're at 99%, you're slow. You're losing so much lap time. You have to be so committed. So it's wet, and towards the end of the session, I was trying to build up, confidence driving this car. And we come around the sort of last corner, second to last corner, and I'm letting him by, and Max comes by me and just power slides this Formula One car across the curb. And I just remember seeing it and just being like, there's no way I can do that right now. Like I'm so uncomfortable. Yes, it was my first session in the car, but I was just like, there's no way. And I came around the next lap and I remember just being like, I'm going to send it. And I slid out and I spun the car, and I spun like down the hill, and like, I was just like, oh man, it's just, but he has so many of these moments, like where he just catches a car that is so on the limit, like Barcelona last year, he had that save out of the last corner, which is just one of the biggest saves I've ever seen. Like little things like that probably people don't even remember, but like you see it from a driver's perspective and you go, that is impressive. And then it's the biggest, honestly, the biggest all-rounder though is his the way he races, which I've literally personally had experience with now. I had it with him in Miami a couple of races ago in the race where he's just everybody has their ways of racing, but he's different to race against. His sort of mindset of just you either back out or you crash is just how in every situation we were racing for probably P10.
Well, what do you see that's like, wow, that's different?
Just the commitment level, I think, of and also just he almost just gives you the option of, you either stay there and we crash together, or I'm coming by kind of thing. So,
and there's an interesting sort of mental bit of gymnastics for you as well, which is where you can have huge respect for someone like that, but also your job is to believe that you can be that guy. You can be a 4-time world champion. You can be a 7-time world champion. Like, when you see someone driving like that, is it daunting or is it inspiring?
It's more inspiring, because at the end of the day, as you know, maybe arrogant as this comes across, we all have that inner belief. You know, we all believe that we can win. So yeah, for me, it's like I guess he's how many years in Formula One now?
Yeah.
I think if I was to think about myself, if I had that much time in Formula One, I'd probably be a much better all-rounded, driver than I am now. So I think compare myself like that, but I do try and race him in these situations. So every time I get, like in Miami, we basically came together, we touched, crashed into each other a little bit, and I do try and race him in these situations, because in general, I always try not to back out anyway. Like, there's not somebody I would really do that with, and I try to race everybody sort of the same, and not look at somebody different. But yeah, it is always different with Max.
Yeah,
to be fair.
But I also think as a driver, there's moments where you have to decide to lay the. Like, I think in Canada, George was just laying a gauntlet down there and being like, no, this isn't happening now.
Yeah,
like we're going to race each other. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's a moment as a driver where you have to decide that in your career. Like
Max and Lewis, 2021, the first part of the year, Max was literally just, every time they were next to each other, he would just door him. Lewis would get pushed off, Lewis would back out, and he was racing smart, but there's a point where you can't race smart anymore, because the other guy just knows that every single time you're going to lift. And basically, they get to Silverstone, and, he didn't lift. And then that's what happens, basically.